Rihanna sat near the corner of the rusted alley. Her body was cold, her legs didn't move, and her eyes followed the others walking past her like she didn't exist. She had lived 10 long years in that wheelchair, and no one had ever helped. Her stand, her people called her cursed, broken, useless, children pointed and laughed, and adults just turned their heads away. Even the stars above her head had stopped shining for her. The streets were loud with alien traders, shouting in different languages. Metal carts moved fast, steam pipes hissed, and the sky was gray with smog. Rihanna pulled her thin shawl tighter, trying to stay warm. Her wheelchair creaked every time she moved, but it never took her anywhere far. She was just a shadow in the crowd, forgotten by time. Long ago, she remembered a different life. She was once a girl with dreams, with laughter, with the hope of flying ships and dancing in open fields. But the war changed everything. A blast from enemy fire hit her transport when she was just 11. When she woke up, she could not feel her legs. The doctors told her she would never walk again, and they sent her home with a chair and silence. Her parents died in the war, and she was passed from one relative to another until no one wanted her. So she came to this slum city, hoping to survive. Every day was the same: wake up, find food, beg, sleep, repeat. But tonight, something felt strange. Something new was coming. The wind changed, carrying a different scent: clean metal, oil, and something like fresh air. She looked up, and through the crowd, she saw a figure walking calmly. He was not from here. He wore strange clothes, smooth and black with silver lines, and on his back was a large pack that hummed softly. He moved with purpose, scanning the area as if searching for something or someone. Rihanna tried to hide her face, afraid he would see her and walk faster like the others did. But he didn't. Instead, the man stopped, looked straight at her, and walked over slowly. She panicked, pulling her shawl closer. Was he a soldier? A slaver? A collector of broken things? The man knelt down, his eyes soft and kind. "You're in pain," he said, not as a question but as a fact. She didn't answer, just looked at him with confusion. He placed a small glowing device on her knee and watched as it blinked red. 10 years, he whispered, more to himself than to her. And still no one helped. "Who are you?" Rihanna asked, her voice shaking. "I'm Elias," he replied. "I'm human." The word human made some nearby aliens step back, whispering in fear or curiosity. But Rihanna had only heard stories about how humans were strange, emotional, dangerous. Some said humans could rebuild anything, even hope. "Why are you talking to me?" she asked, still unsure. "Because I don't like to see people suffer," Elias said, "and I think I can help you." Rihanna stared at him, her heart beating faster. Help? No one ever offered help, only pity or pain. Elias opened his pack and pulled out something metal and sleek. It looked like a leg, but not a real one. It was a robotic limb, light and flexible, glowing softly with blue light. "I build machines," he said. "This one is special. It's smart, and it can connect to your body." Rihanna's eyes widened. "You mean I could walk?" "If your nerves still respond, then yes," Elias nodded. "You could not only walk, you could run." Tears gathered in her eyes, but she blinked them away. It sounded too good, like a dream someone might tell before they leave forever. "Why would you give this to me?" she asked. He smiled gently. "Because you didn't give up." For the first time in 10 years, someone looked at her not with pity, but with belief. Rihanna reached out, her fingers brushing the edge of the robotic limb. It felt warm, alive, almost like it wanted to move. She looked at Elias, then at her useless legs, and then whispered, "I want to walk again." Elias nodded. "Then let's make it happen." The street faded behind them as Elias lifted her gently into his arms. People watched, stunned, as the broken girl was carried away by a stranger. But Rihanna didn't care what they thought anymore. For the first time in her life, she felt light, like she wasn't tied to the ground, and deep in her heart, a tiny flame of hope started to burn again. Even if it hurt, even if it failed, she would try. because someone finally believed she could. Raina had never been carried before, not since her body became still. Her weight was light, almost too light from years of hunger. But the human held her carefully, like she was something precious. His arms were strong yet gentle, and with each step he took, she felt like the world had stopped ignoring her. People stared, some whispered, others laughed, but Elias didn't stop. He walked through the narrow, noisy market streets without once looking back. He didn't look away, not once, not even when others told him to. They arrived at an old transport crate, hidden behind stacked boxes and broken parts. Elias pushed a sliding door open with his foot and stepped inside. It wasn't much, but it was clean, organized, and warm. He placed Raina gently onto a cushioned platform and knelt beside her. "This is where I stay," he said. "No one will bother us here." Raina looked around with wide eyes. Metal arms hung from the ceiling, lights blinked on machines, and small tools were laid out in perfect rows. Strange shapes glowed from screens, and she could hear soft humming sounds from deeper inside the room. It was like nothing she had ever seen in her slum life. Everything in here had a purpose, a design, and now for some reason, so did she. "You don't know me," she whispered. "You don't owe me anything." Elias didn't answer right away. He unzipped a bag and pulled out a scanning device. Blue light passed over her legs, her spine, her nervous system. He watched the results carefully, his face serious and quiet. "I don't need to know your past," he finally said. "I see your present, and I see your future." Raina didn't know how to reply. His words felt like fire and comfort all at once. No one had spoken to her like that before. He didn't ask her how she got injured, or what she did to end up alone. He only focused on what he could fix, on what still worked. She didn't know humans could be like this. Elias looked at the scan data and sighed. "Your lower nerves are weak, but not dead," he said. "I've seen worse." He pulled out a box and opened it. Inside were sleek metallic rods, wires, and tiny glowing cores. "These are nerve translators," he said, showing her one. "They catch signals from your brain and send them to the limbs like bridges." He turned to her again. "If I connect them to your spine and link them to robotic legs, you might walk." "Might?" she asked, her voice thin. "I won't lie," Elias said softly. "It won't be easy, it will hurt, and it might not work right away." He looked into her eyes. "But I'll stay until it does." That promise shook something deep inside her. No one had ever promised to stay. They all left when she needed them most: friends, family, even the doctors. But this human, this stranger from another world, was saying he would stay. She didn't understand why, but her chest felt full, like something heavy was finally breaking apart. She nodded slowly. "Okay." Elias smiled for the first time since they met. It wasn't a big smile, but it was real, and for Raina, that was more powerful than anything she had seen in 10 years. He reached into another bag and took out a small bottle of thick green liquid. "Drink this," he said. "It will help your muscles stay alive during the process." She took the bottle and sipped it. Bitter, strong, but warm. "Where did you learn all this?" she asked, still amazed. Elias wiped a tool with cloth and replied, "Earth had wars too. I built these for soldiers who lost their legs." He paused. "But you're the first one to make me feel like it really matters." The night grew darker outside the crate, but inside, the light over Raina's bed stayed on, glowing gently like a star that refused to fade. Elias worked through the night, checking every wire, cleaning every port, and testing every signal. He didn't sleep, and neither did Raina. She couldn't stop watching him, wondering why he cared. She wasn't strong, she wasn't useful. And yet, this human looked at her like she was worth saving. As the hours passed, the sound of machines surrounded them, the buzz of life returning to her silent body, the faint hum of hope crawling through her broken nerves, and the steady heartbeat of a human who refused to look away. For the first time in forever, Raina whispered to herself, not a prayer, not a wish, but a promise. I will walk, she said quietly, no matter what it takes. And Elias, still working, still listening, gave a slow nod without turning around. Yes, he said, you will. The morning light had not yet broken the thick clouds over the slums, but inside the small metal shelter, something brighter was already awakening. Raina sat still on the soft platform, eyes wide, heart pounding in her chest. Before her, Elias opened a long black case, his hands moving with care, almost like a ritual. She had no idea what was inside. But the sound alone gave her goosebumps, soft clicks, hums, the low whir of something breathing through wires. Then she saw it. Two silver legs, shining, slim, shaped almost like a human's, but lighter, sleeker, stronger. Glowing blue lines ran across the surface like veins, pulsing slowly, as if waiting. Raina leaned forward, her mouth slightly open. They're beautiful, she whispered, voice trembling. They're alive, Elias replied. Not like you or me, but they feel, they respond, and they learn. He lifted one of the robotic legs and held it beside her own. Compared to her weak, bony limb, the metal one looked like it belonged to a warrior. These are called K9 limbs, Elias said. Originally made for Earth soldiers who lost both legs in war. But you're not a soldier, he added, looking at her. You're something rarer, someone who survived without hope. Raina didn't know how to answer. No one had ever said something like that to her. Not in 10 years, she watched. As Elias opened another case, this one holding the nerve link system, tiny silver rods, no bigger than her finger, each one marked with alien symbols and human script. These go into your lower spine and nerves, Elias explained. They act like translators, turning thoughts into motion. He placed a scanner near her neck and it blinked green. Your neural patterns are weak, but clean, he said. That's rare in long-term paralysis. He smiled a little. It means you're ready. Raina's hands trembled. Will it hurt? Elias looked her in the eyes, honest and steady. Yes, he said. But not forever. She nodded slowly. Then I'm ready. He began cleaning the tools with strange blue mist, setting everything into position. Before we begin, he said, reaching into his coat, you need to see something. He pulled out a small, old datapad and tapped on the screen. A video played a young human soldier, crying as he took his first steps with canine legs. He laughed and shouted, I can run again. The voice cracked, but the joy in his eyes was clear. That was my brother, Elias said softly. He died later saving his team. He turned the screen off. But his legs, his design, helped me build something better. Raina felt a weight in her chest, not from fear, but from understanding. This wasn't just a machine. It was a gift made from pain, sacrifice, and love, and now it was hers. Elias began the process. He placed small circles on her skin markers for connection points. Each one buzzed faintly, warming her cold body. Then came the rods inserted gently along her spine and hips. She gasped as one went in, then another, her back arching from the strange electric feeling. It wasn't like pain from cuts or bruises. It was like her nerves were waking up after years of silence, and they didn't know how to scream properly anymore. Her fingers clenched the edge of the cushion, her jaw tight, but she didn't cry. Elias watched her carefully, pausing only when she looked close to passing out. You're stronger than most soldiers I've worked with, he said quietly. I mean that. When the final rod clicked into place, something inside her changed. A hum rose from her lower back. Her toes twitched and her skin felt hot and cold at once. Elias connected the robotic legs to the nerve ports, locking them in with magnetic clamps. Then he stepped back, eyes shining. Try to think about moving your right foot, he said, voice calm but excited. Raina stared at the sleek leg attached to her body. It didn't feel like hers, not yet. But she closed her eyes, breathed deeply, and thought, move. At first, nothing. Then, a small jerk. A single shiver of motion ran through the metal limb. Her eyes snapped open. Did I? Yes, Elias nodded, smiling wider now. You did. She looked down again, and focused harder. The foot moved again, this time more clearly, more firmly. She laughed, a sharp and broken sound, almost unbelieving. "It's working," she whispered. "It's really working." Elias crouched beside her. "We're just getting started." The legs would take time to learn her rhythm, her thoughts, her balance. She would fall again. She would bleed again. But she had done something she hadn't done in a decade. She moved. And that meant she was no longer just a girl in a wheelchair. She was becoming someone else now, someone who could rise. The world had changed for Rihanna. Her legs moved, the metal ones. And though they felt strange cold where skin should be warm, silent where flesh once trembled, they obeyed her mind's command. But freedom never comes without pain, and the first time she tried to stand, her scream echoed so loud it startled birds from the rooftops above. Elias rushed to her side, gripping her arms before she collapsed. "Easy," he whispered. "You're asking your body to do something it forgot long ago." But her pride wouldn't let her cry, not from pain, not from fear, not now. She clenched her jaw, sweat pouring down her neck. "I want to stand," she hissed, her voice rough like sand. "Let me stand." The robotic legs responded again, twitching, correcting, supporting her weight. The neural translators sent sharp signals back into her spine, hot, burning pulses of data her body struggled to understand. Every time she tried to rise, her back arched like lightning had struck her nerves. The pain was like fire dancing up her bones. It wasn't the pain of injury, but the pain of rebirth. Elias didn't speak. He adjusted the settings on the control pad, watching her face, watching the machines learn her limits. The canine system adapted quickly, reading her muscle tremors, her oxygen levels, her balance. Each second, it adjusted to her mind, and each second, Raina got closer to standing. Then came the moment, silent and shaking, when her knees locked. Her body rose slowly, inch by inch, like a phoenix dragging itself from ash. She stood upright for 3 full seconds before her legs gave out, and she fell into Elias's arms. But she laughed, breathless, wild, like thunder inside her chest. "I stood," she said, voice cracking. "I stood." "You did," Elias nodded, proud. "And you'll do it again." But Rihanna had no illusions. That one step took everything she had, and there would be many more to take before she truly walked. Still, she faced the next trial willingly. The training began that same day. Elias built a frame to keep her balanced, wires overhead to catch her if she fell. Each step started with pain, white-hot jabs in her spine, followed by bone-deep aches that made her want to scream. But she didn't stop, not even when her arms shook from holding onto the rails, or when her lungs felt like they might tear apart. One afternoon, during her 4th session, she fell hard. Her head hit the floor, and the metal legs seized up from shock. Blood ran from her lip, and her vision blurred. Elias ran to her, reaching for a med patch, but she pushed his hand away. "No," she growled. "Don't fix it. I need to feel it." Elias paused, looking into her fierce eyes. Then he nodded, letting her bleed a little longer, because sometimes pain is proof of life. And Rihanna, after all these years, was finally alive again. That night, she sat at the edge of her cot, too tired to move. Her fingers touched the robotic knee gently, tracing the metal seam where human engineering had fused with her alien flesh. She whispered, "Why did you come here, Elias?" He looked up from his tools. "Because sometimes the galaxy forgets the ones who suffer quietly." He paused. "And someone needs to remember." Rihanna didn't speak after that, but something in her heart opened, a door that had been locked for too long. She didn't trust easily, but Elias had earned something rare. Not just her belief, but her fight. If he believed she could walk, she would try until she bled dry. By the end of the week, she was walking 5 steps unassisted. Her body trembled after each session, sweat dripping from her forehead, arms shaking from exhaustion. But she smiled now, more and more, and Elias smiled with her. One night, after a long day, they sat outside the shelter, looking at the stars. The metal legs folded neatly under Rihanna. glowing faintly with their soft blue light. "Do you miss Earth?" she asked quietly. Elias leaned back, staring up. "Sometimes," he said. "But seeing you stand is worth more than any sky I left behind." Raina looked at him, really looked. The human who brought her out of the shadows, who refused to walk past her like everyone else. She reached out and touched his hand. "Thank you," she said, voice full of quiet fire. "Don't thank me yet," he replied, grinning. "You still haven't run." She laughed, tired but alive. "Then we run tomorrow," she said, and meant every word. The morning was quiet, almost too quiet. Raina stood in the center of the practice floor, her metal legs glowing dim blue under the low lights. Elias watched from the corner, arms crossed, silent, but his eyes were full of fire. He hadn't said a word since sunrise, and she hadn't needed him to. Today wasn't about words. Today was about one step. The training wires had been taken down. No rails, no supports, no overhead straps. Just her and the ground beneath her. 10 full steps. From one side of the room to the other, and the only thing keeping her up was herself. She inhaled slowly, chest rising, heart pounding hard enough to echo in her ears. The robotic legs vibrated softly, reading her posture, sensing the tremble in her muscles. Each metal toe adjusted its angle, searching for balance. Elias had told her this moment would come. The legs could only learn so much. Now it was her mind that needed to believe. Her left leg moved first. It wasn't graceful, not smooth, not fast, but it lifted, shifted forward, and landed. The sound echoed through the silence, like thunder trapped inside a box. Her breath caught in her throat, but she didn't fall. Her right leg followed. This one wobbled a little, jerking sideways, but it caught her. Then another step, then another. Each one brought sharp pulses up her spine, bursts of pain where metal met nerve. But she welcomed them now. They reminded her that this was real. Not a dream, not a simulation, not another cruel joke from fate. Halfway across the floor, her legs trembled. The weight of her own body began to feel like stone pressing from the inside out. But she didn't stop. She gritted her teeth, eyes fixed forward. Not at the wall, not at Elias, but at the shadow on the far side of the room. Her own shadow, standing tall for the first time in 10 years. She reached the other end and placed her hand flat against the wall. Her chest rose and fell fast. Her forehead slick with sweat, but she smiled a full smile. Wide and wild, she turned to look at Elias, who had not moved from his spot. "Did you see?" she asked, breathless. He didn't answer with words. He simply walked over and bowed his head, pressing his forehead lightly to hers. "I saw," he whispered, "and the galaxy's never going to forget it." The rest of the day passed in a blur of movement and laughter. Raina walked again and again, each time better than the last by sunset. She could make a full loop around the training floor, arms steady, steps confident. Even her voice had changed, stronger, louder, like someone who had found herself again. Later, they stepped outside, the stars peeking through the thick skies. Above the colony, aliens moved in the streets, but many had stopped to stare. Whispers passed from mouth to mouth. "That's her, the girl with the legs." She walked. Raina stood straight, her head high, metal feet firm on the ground. She didn't hide anymore. The world could stare all it wanted. Let them see, let them wonder. Because she wasn't broken anymore. One child approached her slowly, nervous, holding a small toy. He looked up at her legs, then up at her face. "Are you a robot now?" he asked softly. She knelt down, her knees clicking softly, and smiled at him. "No," she said. "I'm just someone who stopped waiting to be saved." The boy blinked, then smiled back. He gave her the toy, a tiny carved wooden bird, and ran off. Raina held it carefully, feeling something warm bloom inside her chest. Elias stepped beside her, watching her face. "You're ready for more," he said. She turned to him, serious now. "What's next?" "There are others," he said. "Like you, forgotten, lost." She nodded. "Then let's help them." He looked proud, more than proud. He looked like a man who had just watched a miracle walk beside him. "You're not just standing anymore," he said. "You're leading." And Ryana understood. The first step wasn't just for her. It was for every broken soul watching from the shadows, waiting to believe again. She would be their proof. She would be their fire. And she would never sit down again. Ryana stood at the edge of the open platform, the wind brushing past her like a whisper from the stars. Below her, the colony buzzed with noise, vendors shouting, machines whirring, engines roaring. But up here, it was quiet. She flexed her legs, the mechanical ones, and felt the soft vibration of energy flowing through them. Every movement now was hers, not given, not borrowed, but earned through pain, through effort, through belief. Behind her, Elias stepped onto the platform, carrying a small metal case. In one hand, "You've been out here all morning," he said gently. "I needed to feel the world under my feet." Ryana replied, her eyes scanning the far sky. Not wheels, not pity, just ground. She turned to face him, and her smile came without effort. "You gave that back to me." Elias opened the case and revealed 2 new foot attachments. Sharper, slimmer, made for speed and grip. "I thought maybe it's time you stopped just walking," he said, "and start running." Ryana raised an eyebrow. "Running?" He grinned. "Well, you don't plan on standing still forever, do you?" The new feet clicked into place with a sharp sound, and instantly, her legs felt different, lighter, faster, more alive. She took a few steps back, testing them, and then, without warning, sprinted forward. The wind howled past her ears as her feet hit the surface again and again. She didn't fall, she didn't stumble, she flew down below. People began to gather, looking up at the strange figure darting along the high platforms. Some pointed, some clapped, others simply watched in silence. They had all seen her in that broken wheelchair, dragged through the dirt, mocked, pitied, ignored. Now she was faster than any of them. Now she was something new, something powerful. When she finally slowed and stopped, Elias was still standing in the same spot, watching her with proud eyes. "Not bad," he said. "But you leaned too far on the second turn." Ryana laughed, out of breath, but glowing. "You're a hard man to impress." "I'm not trying to be impressed," Elias replied. "I'm trying to help you reach what you already are." They sat together on the edge of the platform, watching the colony below. Children chased each other between stalls. Alien elders told stories beside steam vents. It was still a hard world, but now she could face it standing tall. "Why did you really help me?" she asked, her voice quieter now. Elias didn't answer right away. He reached into his coat and pulled out a photo, old and wrinkled. It showed a young alien woman, sitting in a wheelchair, smiling shyly beside a much younger Elias. "She was my first patient," he said softly, "and my first failure." Ryana held the photo gently, tracing the edge of the woman's smile. "She died before I finished the prototype," Elias said, "and I promised myself I'd never walk past someone like her again." He looked at Ryana now, eyes full of emotion. "When I saw you lying in that alley, something in me said, 'Not this time.'" Ryana blinked back tears, her hands shaking slightly. "You didn't just give me legs," she said, voice breaking. "You gave me a reason to live again." Elias didn't reply, but he placed his hand on hers, steady and warm. "You gave that to yourself," he whispered. "I just reminded you it was possible." News of her spread across the colony and beyond. Other disabled aliens came forward, curious, hopeful, afraid. Some were missing limbs. Others had been paralyzed for years. Ryana met each one with a smile and a promise. "If I can stand, so can you." With Elias's help, she started a small recovery center. Not fancy, not big, but full of tools, warmth, and belief. Together they rebuilt more than limbs. They rebuilt lives. One night, long after most of the lights in the colony had gone dim, Ryana stood alone under the stars. She looked down at her reflection in a puddle metal legs, proud stance, eyes full of fire, and she whispered. Not to Elias, not to the stars, but to the girl she once was. "You're not forgotten," she said. You just had to fight your way back. The journey wasn't over. There were still steps to take, still wounds to heal, still hearts to lift. But now she wasn't alone, and she wasn't in a chair. She had taken back her life, step by painful step, and now nothing in the galaxy could stop her again. The sirens wailed through the colony just before dawn. Red lights flashed across the walls, and loudspeakers screamed the words no one wanted to hear. Enemy drop pods detected. Shops closed instantly. Mothers grabbed their children, soldiers rushed to the front gates, but in the middle of it all, a single figure moved the opposite way. Toward the danger, not away from it, Ryana ran, her metal feet slamming into the ground with perfect rhythm. She dodged carts, leaped broken barriers, and moved faster than any other soul in that city. Her hair whipped behind her like a banner, and the wind howled in her ears. Behind her, Elias followed on a motorboard, yelling instructions through a communicator. Go right 3 more blocks, she's close. Because this time, the fight wasn't just about her. This time, a child had gone missing during the alarm, a little girl with one leg, who had just joined their recovery center last week. She had gotten scared and run straight into the zone where the enemy was landing. Ryana didn't hesitate, not for a second. She knew that fear, that feeling of being small and forgotten, and she would never let someone else feel that again. The city's outer wall had already cracked open by the time she arrived. A blast had torn through the south gate, and soldiers were pinned down under rubble. Smoke filled the sky, and alien drones hovered above like vultures looking for prey. But Ryana didn't stop. She ran straight through it, sparks flying as her robotic legs powered forward. A drone turned and spotted her. Its laser began to charge. She didn't duck. She didn't flinch. She dove under its aim, kicked off a wall, and slammed her knee into its sensor core. It dropped like metal rain, sparking in the dirt. The soldiers nearby stared in disbelief. One of them whispered, "That's the girl who used to crawl." She found the child moments later, hiding under a fallen pipe, crying, her hands over her ears. Ryana knelt beside her, pulled her close, and whispered, "I've got you." The girl looked up through tears. "I didn't know where to go. You came to the right place," Ryana said, lifting her up gently. "You came to me." She carried her back, full sprint, dodging fire and debris, and all the while, the city watched the same city that had once ignored her. They saw the metal legs flash, the human-made limbs that didn't just carry her, they carried others. She wasn't just walking now. She wasn't just healed. She was a protector. By the time she returned to the medical bay, Elias was waiting with a med kit in his hand. "You're insane," he said, half smiling, half panicked. "I told you I could run," she said, placing the child down gently. Elias looked at her really. Looked and shook his head. "You didn't run," he whispered. "You led." The child was safe. The walls were defended, and the drones were pushed back, and all over the colony, stories began to spread, not of a human doctor or a robotic leg, but of the girl who ran, the one who rose from rusted wheels, who took pain and made it power, who didn't need a throne or a title to become a legend. Later that night, Ryana stood on the roof again, same place where she had taken her first real breath as a walker. But tonight, there was no fear in her eyes, just peace and strength. Elias came up beside her, holding 2 mugs of tea. "You've changed things," he said softly. "More than you know." She took the mug and smiled. "Maybe, but I didn't do it alone," she added, looking at him. "You showed me who I could be." He shook his head. "You showed yourself." Far beyond the colony, in nearby systems, her name began to spread, not as a soldier, not as a weapon, but as a symbol that the broken could rise, that weakness was not the end, that even the forgotten could outrun the storm. And Ryana, once the girl who couldn't stand, now became the girl who ran toward every soul who needed her. She didn't stop, and she never would, because the pain had passed and the fire had stayed, burning in her metal limbs, in her heart, in every step she took, not just for herself, but for the world that once looked away.